Pop in, say hi. If you've never come into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And if you have been with me for a while, you know every once in a while, these little hiccups, these little sabotages, if you want to say it yourself, because it was my own fault just going too fast and setting my life up that I didn't set it up properly. I set it up in a way that I wouldn't be able to have any chit chats tonight. So, right, Sunday nights of all nights is the night that we have the chit chats going on. And so I had to change my settings a little bit. Hello, Kathy. I was there and then I was gone. I remembered a few months ago I hit a button on my settings for my live shows where I made it possible or impossible for anybody who wasn't a member or a subscriber to my live show wouldn't be able to make comments. And I remembered because I noticed a little comment in my comments there, and it was actually a little bit of an indicator. I guess YouTube picked it up right away that I had left my commentary a little bit different than usual, and I tried to do it through the settings of my live, but it wouldn't let me. I'm sure it would let me, but in that little bit of panic of, oh my goodness, I did it again. But knowing how to course correct it the same way that I did it last time, that I just ended my live and I scooted out and then I just kind of rebooted it. So I should actually go into my channel again, you guys. Let me know if you can't see me anymore while I'm doing this. I'm just going to go right back into my settings and I'm just going to just delete that one because I don't want people to come into my live show tonight and see that it's ended after 10 seconds. So I'm just gonna go in there, da 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 content. That would be it, and then my lives, and then that one's live, and then this one we can delete forever. It's gone. I understand. I understand. I'm deleting it forever. I like that YouTube when I do these kind of things that they actually let me get back into my live here. When I actually do these kind of things in deleting a video or a live that I did improperly, that I'm actually able to um, go in, delete it, but then they double check with me to make sure that that's the video that I want to delete. I have, oh my goodness, just on my What's My Good Cheer, I now have way over 400 podcasts. It's really, it doesn't feel like that many because I had done What's My Good Cheer on Instagram for so long. And then we brought it back over to YouTube, and it didn't seem, that's over a year now. I guess that makes sense that has it really been over a year that I have been doing my podcast full time here on YouTube? That's incredible, right? That time went really, really, really fast. Last night I had kind of made a mental note because I haven't been on Instagram in a long time. And being in the lessons this week of guilt and shame, I kind of took a look at that, because I do feel bad that I'm not on Instagram because I had built up uh, a regular following, a dedicated following over there. And a few of you followed me over on Instagram also. But I felt there was too much of a feed. And when I say a feed, like I felt like I was a little bit of a light socket. Like I never knew who was going to come into my lives, and I know that's part of the the fun and the inspiring and the exciting. But for me, being in the lessons that I was, it was a little bit nerve wracking for me to not know who was coming in to live with me. So once in a while, I would see a name that I didn't recognize, or I had brought in before, but they made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. So I just didn't bring them in at all and just carried on with the live show over on Instagram. But then every once in a while, right, I made friends in this little bit of a story that I'm playing out for the past few years, and I'm so grateful for these friends, even like here, right? And it's important for me to make sure that I recognize and appreciate these friendships that make it possible for me to still be here because, right, as much as I'm my own cheerleader, right, I could cheerlead myself to anything, but if there's that's the only cheerleader in the end, it doesn't make it as fun of a journey, right? And I'm so grateful for everybody here. But again, if I didn't show up here on Sunday night, could you imagine how I would feel, right? How many paybacks, how many chatters live in a course of a week I would do to try to make up for missing that one day that's most important of all the lives that I do. And I go live almost every day. I usually will try and take one day off a week from social media. And I don't do a very good job because even though I'm not presenting and yapping myself, I take in lessons, I delve deep into the content. And it also, I find, is the best time for me to take in that content because in the back of my mind there is that constant reminder of, Cindy, don't forget to do your live. Cindy, don't forget to do your live, right? That I can just relax in my day knowing, because it still comes into my head, don't forget to do your live, and I just like, it's Saturday. Right, we're not going to be doing any lives today. And it's a really kind of a nice, enjoyable, relaxing day for me. And I've come to really appreciate having Saturdays off from social media. But like I said, it doesn't stop me. I'm still listening in on conversations and sitting in on lessons and stuff. It's one thing I love to do. I love to learn. I love this digital age, and I understand it causes a lot of problems, right? It takes away our attention and we get addicted to things, right? Like I love my metal detecting videos, right? But I'm so grateful. I love my mindset videos. I love sitting in with philosophers and, oh my goodness, psychologists. When I said oh my goodness, is because, right, Carl Jung's content has been coming across my path since day one. Day one. And it's heavy. And I never understood it. Right? And every once in a while I'd come across and right? Or somebody would say, Carl Jung said this, right? This famous quote from Carl Jung. And you'd sit there and go, well, that's pretty good. That's pretty insightful and stuff, but I wouldn't delve into the content myself. I didn't have an interest of seeing how somebody else's brain worked. And especially this week, his content is right there. And I'm sitting in right now on a 7 hour piece of content, and I think it's all a accumulation of all his insights. If you don't know who he is, he's a philosopher. He delves in the realm of the brain, of the mind, of the emotions, and right, which is what I do. But I'm so layman. It's like, right, to me, when he talked, or these insights, they just seem so beyond my understanding that I wasn't even interested in listening. And I don't know, past couple of weeks, I'm sitting in endless conversations, right? And I've been enjoying them, and I've been enjoying them in a way that I'm recognizing some of the connects, because I'm always looking for people who can reflect back to me some of my ideas, about, well, whatever it is that I believe, right? you know and I don't come across it lots. I come across people doing the health and wellness industry all the time, but that combination, maybe that's what it is, of the inside and the outside, being in the middle, right? Being able to think that heavy and understand that heavy, and yet be able to just be Cindy, just to be like, again, that layman that is just regular understanding. What do you call that? Slangish, even, right? I wouldn't go that far. Lots of times I need to have words. Um, what do you call that, definition for me, right? I'm a big Google girl, and I'm a big Wikipedia, and I get these, oh, you guys, I got the Genesis. They gave me Genesis. I am so excited, right? Said Gemini, not Genesis, Gemini, Google's new personal app, and really neat how I'm able to say, "Oh, I'd like to learn a little bit about something," and then to be able to have that served to me in a comfortable state, in the exactly what I'm wanting to know about, and no misunderstandings so far. I don't know all the things that Gemini can do for me yet, but I am going to practice a little bit with that. I've got my laptop hooked up. I've got my phone hooked up. This PC that I have, right? It's heading out the door, and I don't even have a microphone hooked up to this one. So I won't be using this with my Gemini, but my new one I will, and then I will, and this supposedly will be the assistant for my entire life. I even got to choose the voices, right? So there's a selection of male voices, a selection of female voices, um, different textures and sounds in the voice. The voice that I chose, he sounds like a country hick. Sounds like a farmer in actuality. But he sounded very layman, right? I don't want my app to be, even though it is the teacher, right? I have to remember that it is technology. And so I wanted to make sure that the technology felt as genuine for me, as plausible, as real for me as I can. And right, Gemini's going to learn alongside of me learning. And I suspect that as it becomes more intelligent, right, because it's a learning process, that, right, this will work like a partner for me in my life. It's the beginning of the digital age, you guys. I work in these betas. I get to try things before other people do, right? When I join in on these betas, but also it's some good information. It keeps the baby boomer relevant, right? And as a YouTuber, it also helps in that understanding of what I need to be knowledgeable in as a content creator. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. Um, every once in a while, I do get in this interesting betas, and then I get to keep them. Right? I even have Workspace, Google Workspace. It's amazing, and these are something. These are apps and programs that, being in the income bracket that I'm in, it's not something that I would splurge on, because these would be luxuries, right? It's not the deluxe plan, right? Nothing I have is a deluxe plan. But these are the introductions, to apps that I get use of, right? That when I do, and right, when I find myself in a better situation, then, right, we go for the bonus plan in the Gemini, right? We go to the bonus plan with TubeBuddy, which helps me out with my YouTube channel. We go to the bonus plan with Grammarly. What a great, and you guys, if you don't use Grammarly, I would suggest you can use it for free. I get so much use out of it even in a free program, that it's worth checking out. You could just pick up the app in your Google Play Store and just download it. It's an amazing, amazing app, especially if you like to write, right? It will help you in the grammar. Well, it'll even write a book for you. You tell them the topics and put all your keywords and characters, and it'll write the book for you. That's how good. That's the bonus plan, though. But that would be the plan that I would get, because as somebody who is in those lower income brackets, they have graced me, right, with trial apps that I get to use. And I've some of these apps I've had for 10 years, right? That, you know, they've invested in me, right? Trusting that they treat me like a customer now, that eventually I will be a customer. And right, and that's how you run a business, right? A little bit of sampler, right? Little appetizer sampler to give you a little bit of taste of what's possible, right? In the meantime, I put a little bit of extra work in myself, right? That I get to learn in the process of trying out different apps, that I get to see what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And again, I'm so grateful because lots of times I don't even know how these things come across my path. I'm not that person that says 7 day free trial, right? And then they start charging you. I don't do those, right? But again, being part of a beta program, and because I'm a Google girl, and if anybody were to have anything on me, it would be Google. They know everything, right down to the social insurance number. They have that if they want that, if they wanted to invade that way. But to each one of us, we have to find that group, find that networks, find those ways that we can find a place where we can trust. And I've been with Google for over 10 years now. And, and again, lots of time, you guys know I say it all the time. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for so and so. I wouldn't be here if not for this. I wouldn't have been here without that experience. You know what? I would not be here without the assistance of Google and YouTube. And that's a truth. Like I said, we were saying this in my live shows and in my podcast, I think during the week, that, I got pulled into this digital age, and it's not going away. It's going to get more technical. And right now, right, as humans, we're trying to keep up with it, right? We're trying to keep up with the digital age, and there's no way of keeping up. But we can expand ourselves to the point where we can maybe find solutions that we can comfortably work with it and live with it, and maybe do a little problem solving in that, but it isn't going away. So it's kind of, you know, we don't know. This is the beginning of the digital age. It's only been around for 20 years, you guys, right? Even you guys are betas. Even you are the first people to step into the digital age. Can you imagine, right? As close as I got growing up was that cartoon television show, The Jetsons, right? When he's talking to his wife or his boss on the TV screen. Or Star Trek with the beam me up Scotties, right? I'm sure there were other ones. I'm trying to remember if Lost in Space. There were Land of the Lost. There were a few of these programs, right? That might have had that opportunity. But yeah, right. It's here, you guys, and it's not going to lessen up, not unless a meteor hits our atmosphere, or right, the ice age is over, and everything melts all at once, and right, Manitoba becomes a deep sea all over again. Yeah, we used to be like Hawaii here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We were a sea. The prairies, we're at the bottom of a deep sea, which once was a deep sea. It's interesting when we look at our landscapes and how fragile we actually are, because right, maybe it would just take one massive tsunami to come into the Hudson Bay, right? How fast and how far would that travel? Far enough that it would have been like the Great Flood, like Noah's Ark, and it flooded the Mediterranean, right? It made that Great Sea, right? That's what they're thinking, that the Mediterranean comes from the Great Flood, and it just got trapped, eh? Yeah, from the flood. Just interesting things that we come across. Okay, you guys, give me a second here. I'm going to have a sip. Oh my goodness, finish my coffee. My sister messaged me um this afternoon, and she says we're going fishing. And I in Winnipeg, we are a city that meets between two rivers, and so I walked along the riverbank, and I found my sister and my brother-in-law, and I spent the afternoon with them, and they were fishing, and my nephew fished. I don't fish. I threw the line out there, but I would never have reeled in a fish. I just wanted to throw the line out there, but my days of fishing are over. If I'm not eating the fish, I'm not fishing. And that's not to say there won't come a day when I might have to in order to survive. But in this moment, I'm quite happy with the grocery store. And even if I was at the grocery store, right, fresh fish is probably not something I would be looking at in the meat case. To be honest, I am not. Growing up, my dad was a commercial fisherman, and he would come home with so much fish, mostly crab, not crab, mostly cod and halibut. He'd go salmon fishing too up the Fraser River. Whatever the season was, he was in if he could get his boat in there. And the reason I said crab is because I was going to say there was a story I always told about my dad bringing home a crab, a big king crab, that the body, right? You see that the Deadliest Catch, that television show, the Deadliest Catch, and you see these big king crabs like this. Well, my dad brought a king crab home, but the body was like a kitchen table. When he dropped it on the kitchen table, he only brought it home so he could brag about it, how big of a crab he brought home. But he dropped it on the table. Its body covered the entire kitchen table, and the legs literally went from one end of the kitchen and trailed out at least 2 feet into the living room. Okay? This crab, my mother let it stay in the house for a few hours until he could invite all his friends over, all his buddies over to come and look at this killer crab. Then my mom said, "Get this out of my house. It's oozing and stinking. Get it out of my house." And my dad went and buried it out in the garden in the backyard. The dogs in the neighborhood were at that carcass all summer long. My mother was peed. But yeah, he buried it in the garden. But that wasn't the reason for the story. It was this story that I told. I tell that story every once in a while, maybe once a year, because it was neat to see a crab like that, and especially what a dangerous job my dad had. While I was watching a television program on, I don't know if it was a Deadliest Catch, maybe another fishing program or something, and they pulled up a spider crab. And I went, oh my goodness, that's the crab my dad brought home. I've been telling this king crab story over 40 years. Over 40 years, I've been telling this story about this king crab that my dad brought home from one of his fishing excursions. Wasn't even a king crab, it was a spider crab that he had caught. And I recognized it right away. And I said, oh my goodness, that's why the legs went all the way out to the living room. That's why the body covered the entire kitchen table. King crabs don't get that big. That's why everybody gave me the side eye and rolled their eyes up when I told the story, because it was so impossible. But when I told that story, I believed it. I believed it was a king crab, right? And my conviction and my knowing that it was a king cat crab, because I saw it with my own eyes, right? When those people rolled their eyes up at me, gave me the side eyes, and let me know that they didn't believe me, I knew it to be the truth. And you guess what? It wasn't the truth at all. I had given it the wrong name of that creature. That was just yesterday. It was funny that I actually thought about it in my conversation today. But yeah, it was all about my sister going fishing. It was really fun going to hang out with them. We just hung out. I stopped off, grabbed a coffee at the coffee shop. It's still room temperature donut, but I don't expect it's going to get any colder than this, because it's summertime now. So that's not going to go cold. I did make myself a cup of tea and it's nice and hot and it's nice and tasty. And I got myself a glass of juice too, because I did, right? I walked there, I walked home. I try to go for a walk every single day if I can, to stay active. Um, and yeah, I'm I'm happy, content, and moving forward. In what? I have no idea, but things seem to be moving okay. I'm just looking at my hair, you guys. I don't even have my hair tied. I didn't even tie my tie my hair up today. I dyed my hair for the last time, you guys. So we're just gonna naturally let my hair go gray. When it's halfway gray, we're going to get it cut, and I'm going to get a perm and a color. And I'm going to get a color, a silver blue or a periwinkle, to help me transition to those old lady colors. But I'm going to put my pink underneath. But I'm going to do a perm, right? I'm going to spiral perm. My hair is you can see my hair is really curly to start with. It does hold a perm, and they normally don't do colors and perms, and they certainly don't do colors and perms already on colored and permed hair. Well, my hair's not perm, but colored hair anyway. But I'm willing to take a risk at it, and if you have to shave my head bald because it all hair all falls out afterwards, so be it, right? Lots of people wear wigs now. Lots of people wear wigs. It's a big thing on YouTube, is people getting fitted for wigs, and you can't even tell that it's not real hair. You can't even tell that it's a wig on these people. This is the quality of wigs that they're making these days. And okay, I have no idea why I'm talking about wigs. Let's take a sip of something cold. and say hi to everybody. Hello, Owen. Hello, Kathy. I hope your week has been going good. But I'm glad you came in and checked to make sure that I was here, you guys. Right? You guys know if it never works out for me on a Sunday night, I'm just going to end the live and I'm just going to come right back in, right? I'm just going to come right back in and do it again. I suspect though that I'll be pretty light in the live tonight when I do that. It usually works out that way. But you never know. Lots of people pop in later on. How's everybody's week been going, you guys? It has been interesting, all this stuff that's been going on, right? Like even in the weather, we just came out of a heat wave, and then we went into 3 or 4 days where it was so cold and rainy. It even snowed. It didn't snow for very long, for an hour or two, but I was shocked considering just the day before that, it was like over 30 degrees outside. It was so hot. Yeah, our weather here is kind of crazy, and I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up as a deep Mediterranean, well, Mediterranean, tropical, I guess. We were more tropical than anything else here. Do you guys know anything about the historical geography of your areas? Because there's some really neat geography in the states, you know, like Yellowstone Park, right? Like the Grand Canyon, that would be cool. Mount Shasta, right? I've been to Mount Shasta. That was an interesting drive. My dad actually had a dried out radiator on the car going to Vegas or Reno one time. He took the whole family, and the car stalled out. It was so hot up in the mountains, and we had to go into the forest and the mountains to collect snow. And he melted it, and he filled up the radiator that way, just enough, just to get him to be. Oh my goodness, I have no idea. My dad was like the king of beaters, except after that one time when me and him we went to Vegas, and he had a big, oh, we went to Reno, and he had a big win. We were only supposed to be gone for 2 or 3 days, and we were gone for like 3 weeks. But when he came home, he had lots of money, and he bought himself a really nice car. But that was his first and only really nice car. I remember my dad was the king of the beaters for sure, right? But yeah, he'd take these beaters on long trips all the time. My dad was road tripping all the time. I was actually talking about it, today we were talking about adventures, right? And my sister wants to go to Disneyland with her granddaughter. Her granddaughter's like maybe 3 or 4 years old now. Yeah, 4 years old. 4 years old now. She's right. She's young. She's not going to remember Disneyland. But then again, Disneyland is for the young ones, and I think she would remember Disneyland, even if she would appreciate it a little bit more at maybe 8 or 9 years old. I think that's the perfect age to take your kids to Disneyland, right? So I said to my nephew, I says, did your mom ever take you to Disneyland? And he said no, but he took different amusement parks in the states. Like there's a few big ones. Um, I can't remember them off by heart on the tip of my tongue, but he says those were some of his best experiences and best memories that he thinks about all the time. He says, yeah, he was 10 or 11 years old when his mom took him on these little vacations. And I said, that's really funny. I says, because my dad did those Reno and those Vegas trips all the time, those road trips, but that was for his own enjoyment. And because, my mom liked to gamble too, right? Most of the time, he wasn't going anywheres, right? Unless she could come too. And of course, having 4 kids at home, it was kind of hard just to leave the kids. They did it all the time when we were teenagers, right? They would take off for a few days. But when we were I would say under 12 years old. They never left us at home for any length of time, right? So usually if the whole family would be going on these trips, and we'd always stay at the Flamingo Hotel. There was some kind of motel that we always stayed at because they had a swimming pool, and then mom and dad could take off to the casinos, and us kids would hang out at the swimming pools. But to me, these were the adventures, Dad take us on those road trips, our Sunday drives where dad would come home from a fishing trip or something. And every Sunday we would go out for a drive and then maybe go for dinner after the drive, or go visit an attraction that didn't cost money, or go to the beach, or go on a trail. My dad made the most magnificent adventures, and there was a family of six, and these adventures never cost very much. I don't think too much more than mom packing up sandwiches for lunch sometimes, and she didn't like to go on the fishing trips. Right, those were my favorites because mom wasn't coming along. Right, it was just us kids and dad, and lots of times we go up to Horseshoe Bay, and we go fishing. He'd wake us up at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're going fishing, right? And we'd all get dressed, get out to the car, and we go for a drive in the dark, right? Get in the little motorboat, motor out to the middle of Horseshoe Bay. Horseshoe Bay is where if you guys remember that television show, The Beachcombers, that's where one of my dad's favorite fishing spots. It wasn't a commercial fishing spot. It was just because he liked to fish. He didn't care. So he would just a rowboat even, right? And we would go fishing, and we did that all the time. But my dad made the most inexpensive, magnificent, dazzle and amaze. Who cared about Disneyland, right? My dad was very creative that way. Very creative. Yeah, we didn't really want for much, right? The very least, my dad always kept a roof over our head, and there was always food on the table, right? I was reminded of that almost every day. Just be grateful of the roof over your head and the food on the table. And remember, I can't wait for the day you turn 18. You're so out of my house. My mom. Yeah. I'm only yapping at that because we were having these talks today, fishing. And what do you do when you're fishing? You have conversations, and we got into the childhood memories. And my nephew is quite interested in our history, especially when he's trying to figure out what's going on with our family, right? That we're all waking up to our own ideas, our own way of moving, our own beliefs, and he's trying to tie everything together. He's doing what I'm trying to tie everything together. I'm tidying up loose ends. I'm trying to figure it out. But sometimes it's not figure outable, right? We're not meant to, right? I don't even truly believe I was meant to wake up to any of these ideas. But right now that it happens, you just kind of gotta go with the flow of that. But I don't, right? I do find it interesting that a few of us in my family, right, my immediate family, are having an experience of their very own. But what's also curious, it's different. My nephew is so smart. He delves into that philosophy. He's so smart. Yeah, yeah. But I find him very interesting too. We have great conversations. He's very insightful, and he gives as much as he gets. Different perspectives, and it's great to listen to new perspectives and to be listened to in our own perspectives. And so I'm kind of grateful for that too. That's kind of the confirmation, right, of what I'm doing and being on the right track, right? Is that idea that I'm not in it alone. right? That's why I'm so grateful for you guys, because you guys are my cheerleaders. You guys show up here every Sunday, and it makes me want to be, well, I want to be here on Sundays, but it really makes me want to be here on Sundays. And it's that company that we keep, right? To feel like you're not in it all alone, right? A little bit, maybe, because we're all having different experiences in our lives, 100%. But I am so grateful that as a baby boomer, that I get to adventure in my life. And I can sit here and I can look at my life and go, oh my goodness, your seat, your computer. But I'm thinking, Cindy, you got your walks, you got to spend time with your sister today, fishing, even though I didn't fish, right? I don't kill animals. I can't bring myself to I would be so heartbroken if I caught a fish. It would be a different story if that was my meal, if that was the way I was going to survive, right? That I had to be fishing. But I'm grateful that in this moment I don't have to do that. And so I don't even want to sport fish because, it's just not my nature. And I don't have a problem with anybody else. I rooted them on, right? They caught so many fish today. Like I couldn't believe it. They caught at least between the three of them, maybe a dozen fish. They probably caught a dozen fish today. That's a lot of fish just sitting for a few hours on the side of the bank of the river. They let them all go, but still, right? It was fun. It was fun to watch, right? But I was making them feel guilty. I was asking them lots of questions because they had a big jar of worms and, right? Are they warm enough? Do they got food, right? And then not looking when they're putting them on the hooks of their fishing rods. I'm trying not to look at it, right? And then I'm they catch a fish and I go, okay, that's enough pictures. Get them back, get them back in the water. They can't breathe. Yeah, so they'll probably think twice next time before they invite me to come fishing with them. It was funny though, but I have to say, I should have taken a garbage bag. Oh my goodness. I could not believe the amount of garbage on the banks. So much garbage. If I had had a garbage bag, I would have spent all that time instead of cheering them on, right? Just I would have just walked around the area and I would have cleaned it. I would have cleaned it all up. Down by the river, I think the homeless are probably taking their morning baths down there. And there's so many clothes just sitting in the bushes. Like those clothes need to be thrown away. So much water bottle and wastage. It's just everywhere. And so I have to remember next time they invite me down, I might even make it a point of just taking the bags and going down there for a walk myself and cleaning it up, just because it needs to be done. It really it kind the litter. It's really funny, in my give back, in my recognition of that big part that Mother Nature plays in our lives. That I could have, right? I could have been that campaigner for so many things when it comes to Mother Nature, like saving the trees, because you guys all know how much I love the trees, right? But it's the garbage that bothers me, right? And it's really funny because I wasn't that way as a kid. I paid no mind to it, in all honesty. To be honest, I don't even separate my garbage in my apartment, right? It goes down the chute. One bag, it goes down the chute. But I find other ways. Like I'm never leaving my garbage on public property. Like I'll take my garbage home with me. I'll stuff it in my purse or wait till I get to a garbage pail or something. I'll take care of that. I clean areas. I just did one a couple of weeks ago. I cleaned an entire park area under an underpass because it was so full of garbage, but it hadn't bloomed. Now it's too late because the green is out. So now I wouldn't have been able to get in there because it's just too much brush. But I was able to clean it all out in a few hours and hold all the garbage away myself, and kind of proud of me, proud of myself in being able to give back that way. But it's funny, of all the things that I could have picked into that stewardship of Mother Nature, that I picked the litter bug thing. Maybe it's something from the 70s, because I do remember on those Sunday drives and stuff, driving down the highway, and there were those orbits, litter orbits, right? And, that's when people paying attention to litter was something that was just starting to get noticed. People were just starting to talk about it. And that's when they put these orbits. They were great big round spheres out on the highways to collect the garbage, right? And I remember my dad driving down the highways and just flicking his cigarettes out the window after he finished smoking them without even putting them out. I wonder how many forest fires my dad started. There's no way that he didn't start any fires, and that's a truth. That's My dad was a chain smoker, and I could just remember the inside of the car on these Sunday drives we would take. It would just be white smoke. You couldn't even see out the window. It would just be like smoke. Or you would have the window down low, and then he'd be going to flick a cigarette out the window. He'd go, do the window up, because he knew that if he flicked the cigarette out the window, it would just fly in the back window at us, right? And then there might be a fire in the back seat or something. But yeah, I do appreciate uh, a clean city, a clean environment, a clean living space. What's that saying? You don't eat where you poop, right? Like right. This is our home. Like, so, the boulevard's dirty. Pick up the crap on the boulevard. And like I said, I felt bad today that it didn't even cross my mind to take a garbage bag with me, because I would have been at it full force. I even told my sister, I says, I'm willing to go back to the coffee shop and ask them if they would give me a garbage bag, right? Because I'm just standing around watching them fish when I could be walking around and cleaning this little park area where it's specifically meant for people to go and sit and fish right in the city, right? The, the fish are not edible, right? People don't eat the fish that they catch in these rivers. At least I don't think so. At least not this close into the main city, maybe way up north. No, because the rivers run. These rivers, right? One is the Assiniboine River, but one is the Red River. And the Red River is actually fed by the Mississippi River. And the Red River, this is strange, you guys, to think about, but the Red River runs into Canada, right? It doesn't run from Canada into the States. That's not the way the river flows. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Hello, Andrew. Holiday Inn. My parents couldn't afford the Holiday Inn. That would have been luxury, the Holiday Inn. The Holiday Inn went that back. Well, I'm only saying that because I know your age, Andrew. You're the same age as I am. I think you're only a few months older than I am, or a few months younger than I am. But yeah, I can't remember the name of that motel. Because I tell lots of story from those gambling trips. Because there's so many of them, that kind of represent in what I do about the care for our children, and right. Um, my sister was just a baby. She was 2 or 3 years old, and my parents would go gambling and leave us at the motel, and I was swimming around, swimming around. I was a fish, right? I was actually a competitive swimmer until I was like 12 years old, until I felt I looked too unpleasant in a bathing suit, and then I gave up. I gave up swimming altogether. But I found my sister in the bottom of the pool drowning. I couldn't have been more than 10 years old myself. And my baby sister, Carolyn, she was down there at the deep end, just laying there on the bottom of the pool. Oh my goodness. Right? I don't know if I ever told my parents about that one, but it's something that I never ever forgot, because it would have been so easy for me. It just so happened that, right, I swam over or something and said, what's that? Right? And noticed that, oh my goodness, it's Carolyn, right? Oh, you're a few months older. Holiday Inn was, as I understand, middle of the road price. There could be five of us and a dog in one room. Ah, yeah. My dad did mostly motels. Actually, he always did motels. He never did hotels. I guess it had something to do with lots of kids and the fact that he was leaving the kids behind too drive the motel managers crazy. But yeah, I don't think they had swimming pools in the hotels. Maybe did they have swimming pools at the Holiday Inn when you were a kid, Andrew? Let me know, because I think might have been the reason that we stayed in the motels, not just the fact that they were cheap, but because they had a swimming pool and it was enough to entertain us kids. Because sometimes my parents would be gone first thing in the morning, and they wouldn't come back until early the next morning, right? Because everything is 24/7 in Reno and Vegas. Two times in the same day, Andrew? You had two drowning experiences? I've had many, I think, drowning experiences. The only reason I know, I've had at least two or three of them, I would say. And like I said, I love the water. But the reason I say that is because of the feeling that I get right before it's done, before I drown, is that giving up and that sense of everything's okay, life is good, right? That acceptance, it's very comforting when you drown. When you get to that last point, it's very comforting, right? It doesn't feel like drowning. I think you pass out almost before you drown, and I think that's the point that I was saved or pulled out or had a spur, my other parts of me going, get up, Cindy, you're in a crisis, right? Give me a little bit of a jolt and get my butt in gear. But yeah, two in the same day, that must have been super, super traumatic, Andrew. Um, my hello, William. Andrew says, my experiences were minutes apart. I stepped into water that was a little too deep for me. It was a Holiday Inn swimming pool. I love the water, though. Yeah, you're like me. You said you were very young and not as good a swimmer as I thought. Uh, right? I don't know. I was a baby. I was one of those water babies. I was high diving by the time I was 3 years old. I used to just take the swimming pool keys off the wall myself, grab a chair, get the swimming pool keys, and go swimming by myself. I remember getting caught constantly by the caretaker because the swimming pool was in a different building out in the court. And I get dragged back home, and my dad would just look at these people and say, don't tell me how to raise my kid. My kid wants to go swimming, they're going to go swimming. Right? And I was such a good swimmer. I loved swimming from very, very young age. But when you get introduced to something at that age, it's very easy to pick up, and you end up loving it Me and my sisters went swimming 2 weeks ago. It was so much fun all afternoon. I was just throwing the horseshoes or whatever, the rings into the water, and then diving for the rings. It was so much fun. I actually have, right? It was so much fun. I says I'm going fishing or I'm going swimming every week. And I put I didn't like the bathing suit that I had, so I put something else together and it's been sitting there. I want to go swimming again. Right? Maybe Tuesday I can talk my sister into maybe going swimming. We'll see. We'll see. Right? That would be nice because it doesn't cost any money. They have free days and stuff like that. And they actually have a program here for low incomes to use the community rec centers and swimming pools. I thought about applying for one of those memberships, but now it's summer. I suspect that I'm probably going to get out a little bit. But the pools, the water, I tell you, even the showers are amazing. I love the water. Today I had like a 25-minute shower. I just let that water just pound on me for 20 minutes even before I washed my hair. I just stood there. It was absolutely just amazing. But I give myself these things I need, and I felt I really needed to be underneath that shower head to the extent that I was, right? Okay. Where do you swim, Owen? Do you go to the swimming pool or to the beach? We have a beach here in Manitoba, Winnipeg Beach, and it's it looks like the ocean. It's I think 14,000 square kilometers. It's really huge, right? If you look at the map, you can see Lake Winnipeg. It takes up like I don't know 1/8 of the entire province. That's how big it is, and I love going there. It's my favorite beach. But we have Grand Beach. We have lots of nice beaches, but our beaches are lakes. But the lakes are so big, they actually have waves, not surfing waves, but we get nice waves, nice big waves too, especially when the big boats come out, right? And there's no sharks. It's why I don't go swimming in the ocean anymore. Not since I saw that movie Jaws. And it was weird because I love the water, right? I love swimming. I used to jump on a bus as little kids by myself, right? And go down to Stanley Park to Second Beach, and I would swim all the way out to the barges out in the right, and speedboats would come by and say, "Oh, do you need help?" And I go, "No," right? Because I was all proud of myself, not understanding anything about currents, but being all proud that I was such a great swimmer and I was so far away. But it wasn't necessarily that far all the time because sometimes there were sand dunes. So, you go 100 feet and there would be a sand dune where you stand up and the water's only up to your knees. And then you start swimming again. And then, right, maybe there was a quarter mile of water underneath you. Who knows? But after I saw that movie Jaws, that was the end for me. I never went into the ocean again. As far as I would do is that piece of wall that they make a swimming pool out of the ocean, right? And it's ocean water, but it's swishing into the pool. That's about as far as I would go when it comes to getting in the ocean after that. Yeah, I remember that was like I think it was 12 or 13 when Jaws came out. 1977. I'm trying to think. Must have been around there, right? It was like when there were lots of scary movies that came out about the same time, right? I remember that Dolby Sound had come out, and I saw Earthquake with my dad. Dad took me to go see Earthquake, and I couldn't even stay. 10 minutes into the show, I was crying to get out because that Dolby Sound just felt like everything was just shaking, like everything. As soon as the earthquake started in the movie, I was like Get me out of here. My dad took me to the store next door, bought me some candy. He really wanted to see the movie. And we went back in, and it wasn't so bad because it got into the storyline after the earthquake after that. So then it wasn't too it wasn't too bad. But I remember, these things really impacting me. There was lots of these. The Exorcist impacted me. Right? Those scary. My mother loved the scary movies and the witch movies and that stuff. I didn't like that. I built a little resilience to it, right? And I used to like the Believe It or Not, but the Believe It or Not the cartoon books. I remember, I really loved those Believe It or Nots, and those were kind of scary, but they were supposed to be true, right? So I thought maybe what's that word? Macabar. Uh, the yeah, I can't pronounce the word. In my brain, I'm saying it right. Macabre? No, not saying it right. But yeah, I think maybe that's what got me interested in. Maybe because I've also built up a little resilience because of watching Jaws and The Exorcist. There were lots of scary movies at that time, right? For me, I was always about, well, I have to say, as a teenager, right until I was out of high school, I loved the musicals. Anybody else here like the musicals? I love the musicals. And it's really funny because it's not realistic. You don't see a lot of musicals being produced out there. Wicked recently, Fiddler on the Roof. Barbara Streisand did the musicals, but that was still at the tail end of the musical era, wasn't it? You know, uh, what was that movie? ABBA, the ABBA movie, and that was a musical, but there hasn't been a lot of musicals, not of recent anyway. And I think it's because it's so unrealistic, right? It's kind of phony baloney because walking down the street on the norm, people don't burst into tune, right? They don't swing around the lampposts and singing in the rain. It's just not something we do. We're becoming unrealistic in allowing things that are not real, right? We see these things and go, oh, that's not true. I don't want to watch this, right? This is phony baloney, right? But you got to think it brought so much. I remember as a kid, like that movie Carousel, that was a musical, but it had such a great story and great lines of morals and lessons in these. And of course, some of my favorite actors and actresses because you got to see the multi talent, you got to see the dancing, the singing, the acting. And then maybe for myself, I did a little bit of comparison. Why can't I be like that? Or maybe I did probably just have the imagination, right? The imagination to create that in my own fantasy worlds. I probably did that. I probably spent a lot of time in my own fantasies growing up. I know. I was a big daydreamer. Me and my sister, Carolyn was my youngest sister. She was a daydreamer too. You could always, I don't space out like that anymore. Not as much anyway. Sometimes when I'm tired at my desk, sometimes I'll just kind of, and then I'll go, oh, okay, Cindy, turn everything off. It's time to go to bed. Sometimes I kind of do that. But as a teenager and as a child, and I could do that for half an hour or an hour. I could just stare off into space at nothing, right? And everybody would say is, what are you looking at? What are you thinking about, right? I don't do that anymore. My sister Carolyn does it constant, right? But I don't do that anymore. It's funny, a lot of the things that I used to do, I don't do. And some things that I've never done before that I absolutely love, right? Like the crystals. The crystals are fairly new for me, right? And I going crystal digging, the camping and the parks, that's something that's been in my life my entire life. Um, but it's only in the planning, in how elaborate, right? And I tie it up with my goal setting, and it makes me feel accomplished when I can manifest something out of my dreams, my goals, my wishes, right? So that's why I've been better able to do it in the past few years. Is because I tie it in to my goal setting and in my reverse engineering and in my movement forward, and tie it in with my brand and what I bring here. But it has always been in my life, right? Right? It's always in my passions. I've always been inside my head, but for the most part, it has been in the fantasies, right? In the creative, I wish my life was like this, and then staring off into space and then creating that, but not really, I don't know, believing that it was possible for myself, right? And I think the reason I don't do that anymore is all tied up into me actually in a realistic way trying to manifest it for real, not as a dream, not as a wish, not as a chancy, not as a gamble, not as a risk, right? That I'm actually just taking baby steps in my own life, right? In the own showing up here on Sunday nights and just letting it create itself, like I allowed YouTube and Google to draw me in. And I wasn't always able to come in front of the camera. It took me a long time, but now, right? Sunday nights I come in here and I feel so comfortable with you guys, right? That some of the topics, I don't do those topics so much here on Sunday nights because this is supposed to be our rest day from the heavy, but it allows me at the same time to bring that comfortableness that I learned here on Sunday nights to bring it to the Monday, Fridays now. And that's where I most need it because that's the heavy topics. Those are the topics that sometimes in my nervousness, in some of those realistic ideas that I have, and I know I'm touching on things that are not widely accepted or widely understood, right? That sometimes it's hard for me, and that's why it's so important, right, that you guys are here with me because it makes me brave enough, right? It's that cheerleading squad that I have. And I know if I went too far outside of myself, you would shut it down. You would change what's that, the topic of conversation. Talk about topic of conversation. Let's hear what's going on here. Looks like William and Andrew are chatting away. Um, let me see where I left off here. Um, but just how come you didn't get out of the pool right away, Andrew? Let me know. I'm coming down the comments. But when you drowned the first, almost drowned the first time, how come you didn't get out of the pool right away? That moments later, it had an opportunity to try and take you down again. I'd be interested to know that, right? Maybe it was just because you loved the water and you thought the danger was over, maybe in that moment. But if it was as scary as you said that it was, that for me, I probably want to get out of that water, and I probably would want to get into the water afterwards, right? Uh, Lots of times, I will, if I have an accident or something, it does take me a while to build up the courage to try it again, right? If I fell off the bike learning to ride the bike, I would be a little bit uncomfortable about getting on the bike again. But then again, if I had a crew like you guys cheering me on, right? Maybe I would get on that bike. It is in the company that we keep, that we learn, right? That, I don't know, bumps and bruises, that's part of playing, isn't it? Sometimes it's just playing. I know in the 60s and 70s, for me, myself, oh my goodness, almost every day, scratches, bumps, bruises, and I spent a lot of time outdoors. Yes, my dad took us on road trips and adventures and stuff like that. But remember, he wasn't home all the time, right? So, in his own way, I think he was showing me that, I could create my own adventures, that I didn't have to be trapped, right? Because with my mother, it was kind of the idea of out of sight, out of mind, right? If I wasn't around, that was perfectly fine. If I didn't come home till 1 o'clock, that was perfectly fine. If I wanted to go sleep over at a friend, perfectly fine. But if I was home, right, then that attention would be on me. So I did love the outdoors. I spent a lot of time outside, adventuring on my own. And it was funny in those days. I would just get on as a little kid, 5, 6, 7. I would just hop a bus and go on adventures, right? Kids didn't pay. Kids were free to get on the bus till they were 10 years old, but right, nobody bothered me. I would just get on the bus and walk on my seat. I was a little kid, right? No parent with me or anything. Nobody, not once did anybody ever ask me, "Where's your mom?" Right? Just get on with everybody and just walk to my seat. And I would go off and have these amazing adventures in my life. And it was okay in my family. That's, you know, as as many difficult experiences that I had in my family, living in that dynamic family that I had, that idea of free choice, that was my dad for sure was the instigator in that. He wanted to raise his kids in free choice. All of us kids had free choice in our lives, um, and right, make some choices, make some wrong choices, make a big mess, have a boo boo. That was all part of making choices, even to the choice of religion, because my dad was spiritual and my mother was a Christian, right? So there was no baptisms for any of the kids, no nothing. That was all free choice. I never went with either of them, right? I never went the Christianity route. I never went the spirituality route. But when I woke up to some of the ideas that I had, of course, I'm going to be moved in the experience that I had with my father, because that experience I had with my mother was very traumatizing. It was something I was trying to push away, not to bring on. And also, again, in that connection like I did with the gambling, right? When I turned to those coping mechanisms to help me get through the tough times in my life, that coincidentally I picked an addiction which was the exact same passion as what my dad had, the gambling. So I find it interesting in my choices of how I cope, and that was all free choice. But again, in having that free choice, when I woke up to some of these ideas, of course, I'm going to swing to my dad's ideas. I never got my dad's ideas as a child, as a teenager. I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I knew he meditated twice, and I didn't understand it. Right? I didn't get it. That was just my funky dad. Right? That was my dad and some of his silly ideas, and I didn't even think it was silly. I just thought that was my dad's way of thinking, because of some of thought leadership and some of those interests that he had, it suited him very, very well, right? Because he loved thought leadership, and because of the content that he studied and the books he read and the intellect that he was, that it just suited him very, very well. But again, in that idea that, in a coping mechanism for myself, that I chose gambling. So I suspect that when I woke up to these ideas, I wanted to feel comfortable in it. And I woke up to understanding what my dad's religion was all about, right? In a way, was it a religion? No, but it was beliefs, my dad's own beliefs, and it was all tied into the education. And, I didn't make that connection until well after I was in it. But now I'm in it and I'm going, oh my goodness, I'm more my father's daughter than I thought. Okay, let's come down in these comments. Um, Someone told me about renting a place, tossing poolside furniture into the water, jumping in fully clothed so he could play Poseidon Adventure. Oh my goodness. If somebody told you to jump off the bridge, would you? This is what my parents would tell me all the time. I said, so and so told me to. I said, well, so and so told you to jump off the bridge. Would you? Basically saying, common sense. Take your time. Think about these things. Oh my goodness. Okay, Andrew says, I saw a lady who survived sinking of the Andre Doria. Uh, Twice she rescued a child from the water. Though she couldn't swim, she still said she loved the water and the ocean. Isn't that amazing, Andrew? I never heard that story. I'm going to write that down and see if I can find that story. Did it make it into a movie, Andrew? Because that looks like kind of a topic that would make a good movie. Um, Kind of like what was that lady from the Titanic? Molly Brown, the unsinkable Molly Brown, right? I love these hero stories. I love, especially when it's like women, right? Where you have to really drum up that courage, right? She didn't even know how to swim, and she saved two kids. That's amazing. Okay. Oh, wrong mouse. Okay. Andrew says, I saw a lady who survived the sinking of the Andrea Doria. Twice she rescued a child from the water. Though she couldn't swim, she still said she loved the water and the ocean. I love the water and the ocean too, but I'll only go up to the ocean up to my knees, and I might not even go up to my knees because I've seen those sharks chase fish right to the shoreline and then scoot themselves back into the ocean after doing that. Um, Owen says he goes to the beach club that has a nice swimming pool. Oh my goodness, you go to the beach club. That's amazing that you have a beach club. Andrew says, I saw Jaws in a big theater, the screaming and yelling from the audience. I'm a slow reader, but I read the novel Jaws in one day. Can you imagine the suspense in that movie, Jaws? Right? Oh my goodness. The music. And I was talking about music in horror movies this week in my live show, right? And and it's true because the English made the worst horror movies and ghost movies ever, right? Oh, they were horrible. The storylines were terrible. I think of all the horror movies and ghost stories, there was only one that I really liked, and it was that one with Donald Sutherland. It was called The Red Coat or something like that. I can't remember, but it was pretty scary. But the things that the English were really good at were putting the scary music in these terrible ghost stories, right? And they build up the momentum of the scary music. There you go. Don't go around that corner. Don't go around that corner. And then it goes around the corner and just kind of, oh, there's a bunny rabbit. Oh, yay. Right. And I always felt ripped off, right? Because they build such momentum in the scary music that the movie would not compete with that, would not be equal in that, and would be really disappointed. I did not like anything but good old American horror movies. And I was big on the horror movies as a teenager. Oh my goodness, the Terror Trains, all those Chop Chop movies. Terror Train, which ones were those? Um, the Christmas one, Black Christmas, um, all the Jason movies. Oh, they were so Halloweens, all the Halloweens. Those were all Terror Trains. Oh, they were all terrible. I can't even watch those movies now. Oh my goodness. I have no interest in watching those movies. And you know what? The kids these days would just laugh at us in those movies because they never really, because they weren't allowed to. They weren't allowed to show the knife going into somebody or anything. Might be a little bit of music, but there would be an arm covering it while it was going in. You never saw the brutality of it in the movies because of the regulations in movie making. Right now, it's a different story, right? Things are so gruesome, but not just in the movies, but these video games these kids are playing. The graphics in those video games. I don't play video games at all, but I do see the advertising for them every once in a while, and I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is crazy. What is whoever or whatever, what are they training the kids to do here, right? To be shot off into space and to protect the world from aliens, like, right? Like a game of, what was that game that we had in the 80s? It was the very first game. It was it looked like a spider and it would shoot invaders. Is that what it was called? Invade? No, I can't remember. And it would shoot these little space aliens, right? Nowadays, these videos are like movies themselves. It's crazy, crazy. Yeah. I'm glad I never got hooked on the video games, I have to say, right? To take me away, it would take me away from everything. It would take me away from the lessons. It would take me away from the connection to Mother Nature. It would damage relationships with my family. I can imagine how terrible sensation it is for parents who never grew up in that generation where kids can be so compulsed, but we were, right? And this is the argument for these teenagers who are on the video games, because when I grew up, it was the television. It was we were glued to the TV. My mother would say, "Get away from the TV. Sit at least 6 feet away from the TV." We'd all be laying on the floor as close to the TV screen as we possibly can. And right? Oh my goodness. I didn't want to go to school. I just wanted to lay on my living room floor and watch TV. Right? So it's not fair. And then the generation before me, right? Instead of going to square dances, instead of working in the fields, maybe they still worked in the fields but they would sit around the radio and they would do the same thing with the radio, right? It's just in the stage of, right, of progression in this world, and it's going to change. It's like we started off the beta tapes, then we went to the VHS tapes, then we went to the DVD tapes, then we went to the Blu-rays, then we went to pay-per-view. Have we gone to something else yet? I haven't been online. I haven't watched a movie for a long time. But I'm sure there are other ways. It's gone past pay-per-view now. Even in the theaters. We go to the theaters. Me and my sister, we went to a movie And we got these special chairs that gave you massages and laid back like it was a bed. You could heat them up. Oh my goodness, they had little tables that came across your lap. It's technology. It's just changing, and we need to learn to change with it. And that's the little bit of give back too, that you guys come and hang out with Cindy on Sunday nights, right? And even if you don't work in the digital age or play in the digital age, you kind of connect in the digital age, but connecting with me on Sunday nights. And lots of you guys got pulled into the digital age, to the age of AI. I think we all have, right? If you've got a microwave, right? Or a clock beside your bed, you're connected. The TV is all coming down, streaming from satellites now. It's not cables under the ground and stuff anymore. It's all Elon Musk, all floating around like a junkyard around our atmosphere. And wasn't it last week that a satellite uh, came in? It had been up in our atmosphere for 25 years and it finally died out. They didn't even know exactly where it was going to drop, but they were paying attention. I never followed up on it. I'm not sure where it dropped or if it dropped, but they were expecting it to drop that week. And yeah, there's a lot of junk, a lot of, well, right, you got to think all those old cars and stuff are different now, right? It's just a new model going up there. And lots of times they're not saying, oh, well, let's just take it to the spacecraft junkyard, right? Up in space, it'd be like that plastic island that they have in the middle of the ocean that they are finally depleting, you guys. It is, and it's not even something to be congratulatory over, because it had actually turned into an ecosystem for all kinds of living organisms as they were dragging it all in. They were, right, it truly had become an island, but it was a dangerous island nonetheless, right? The birds and the fish were still getting entrapped in all the plastic and eating it, right? And we're eating what's eating it. So yeah, it's a great thing that they're cleaning it up. They're doing a really good job on it. And our ozone, they say by 2036, our ozone layer is going to be completely healed, right? That our ozone layer has been healing for a very long time. So it's a good example, and it's evidence to show the impact that humans can make when we come together and make a decision to save something. And when I said that, let's go back to that free choice that my parents gave me, gave all us kids. And each one of our us kids, right? Like I said, Tracy was, well, she was the millionaire in the family. She was the rich one, but she was the narcissist, so either very, very controlling, but very loving at the same time. Remember, as much as she was my mother's daughter, she was my father's daughter too. And this is why I don't like labeling, because none of us would fit into that labeling as a stereotype. Because again, as much as I swayed towards my father's side and pushed as much as I could of my mother away, there were some amazing traits about my mother that I had no choice, because they were so magnificent and life saving, right? That never give up, right? That bind away to get up, brush my knees off, and just to keep going. That all comes from my mother, right? That working hard, Both my parents worked hard, but my father played as hard as he worked because of that death sentence that he had been given in his prognosis in his young adulthood, right? So that kind of put a damper on things, and it kind of put a kink in the way he brought his family up, right? Because he was living the best life for himself as he possibly could. And he shined wherever he went. Whatever he crossed his path, my dad shined on it. But I don't think he ever specifically went out of his way to save the world. But in his own set as being the example for his family, no doubt he did it, because when it came across my path decades after my father had passed away, it came across my path again. I snagged onto it. And, even though I might not have gotten a lot of those lessons in my life, I must have been paying attention as the spectator and as the student and as the codependent that I was, right? Yeah, because I was very codependent on my father because he was my safe space. No question. Okay, let's come into these comments, you guys. Oh my goodness, I missed a lot. Okay, you guys. Even when I was in college age, I had to be home by 9:30. Not sure why. I think it was because my father simply didn't know how to be a parent or what was reasonable. Very interesting that you say that, Andrew. The rule in my house is if I was out of the house, my mom didn't care what time I came. If my dad was home, then I was home at a good time because I love spending time with my dad, and my mother for the norm for the most part would not try. It was the 70s. She got away with a little bit. For the most part, when my dad was home, it was kind of safe, right? She wouldn't do any of her crazy stuff because she wouldn't want my dad to think anything differently or anything bad about her, right? My dad wasn't blind to what was happening, but I don't think he really understood to the extent of the damage that my mother was doing within that household, and that's the truth, right? My mother caused a lot of damage, not just for me, but for all the kids. And sometimes they see it, sometimes they don't see it, but I see it for them because as much as I'm looking at the impact on myself and in my life, I look at the impact in their life too. My sister Tracy being the overachiever, being the 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 golden child, being under my mother's mentorship. She might not have gotten that negative interaction that maybe I got as the scapegoat that I was, right? And I got to take responsibility because I played that role too in being the big sister, I do believe, right? But each one of us kids was brought up differently. My sister Alice was my dad's absolute favorite, right? And my sister Carolyn was the baby in the family. I was the first one, right? I was the beta. So I went through it first, and if they messed up, right? It was just Cindy. And then after a while it just became a dumping ground for the mistakes and the trials and right, we'll see if this works and but within my own choices. But lots of times I didn't feel I had a choice. But I did. I had lots of free choice. I could stay out till 1 o'clock in the morning. But if I was home, I was in bed at 7 p.m., Andrew. You were very lucky. You got to stay up till 9:30. But I was very embarrassed to say in grade 12, if I was home, I was in bed at 7 o'clock at night, and there was no TV in my bedroom. There were no video games in my bedroom. Yeah, just me and my three sisters, because we were all sent off to bed. Right, every night, once in a while, somebody. Well, every night, but every once in a while, I would get chosen to come out to the living room after night, right? 10 o'clock when MASH would start, dad's favorite television show. He'd come in and, Cindy, are you awake? I go, yes. come on out. Don't wake your mother. And I would go out. But my mother never missed anything. Never. She could hear a pin drop, and she always know I was out there. And she'd let my dad have 10 minutes with me. And then she'd scream, I know you're out there, get to bed. And I'd have to scurry off to bed as soon as MASH was over, right? She'd usually let me finish the MASH show. She never, right? When dad was king of the household. So not only did us kids, treat my dad like he was king, my mother treated my dad like he was king. My dad ruled his house. But when he wasn't around, my mother was boss. And when my dad wasn't around anymore, my mother was emptied of who she was in an instant. And my sister Tracy swooped in and became the matriarch of our family, right? Because she loved that sense of control. She loved being the leader. She loved being, right? She was meant for things. She was brought up to be meant for things. My mother and my father, I trust, thought it was going to be my sister Tracy who would wake up to some of these ideas, right? And, I guess they didn't see it just because of the negative state that I was in, right? They didn't see that potential in me. They had no expectations, right? Now it's a little bit different in that. And I'm not rejecting that position because, being the oldest child, my sister shouldn't have had to come in and take over as the matriarch. Being the oldest child, I should have come in and saved the day. But I didn't have the capacity, I didn't have those lessons. And in truth, I didn't want to, right? I didn't want to. I didn't want to be under the thumb of anybody, and I suspected I didn't want to put anybody under the thumb of myself. Yeah. Okay, you guys, that was the conversation for today. We're going to come into those last little comments because you guys have been yapping tonight. Um, Originally, my father wanted me home at 8, but I negotiated for 9:30. He didn't like me, but for some reason, he wanted to be nearby because he knew you were the light, Andrew. He knew you were the light. You were in the same situation as me. My parents knew who I was 100%, right? But, I remember saying to my dad, I don't love you one time. I remember him saying something to me, and I said, I hate you. And I must have been, I don't know, maybe 15 years old. And my dad stumbled over himself for like days. I felt so terrible. I had never done that before, but he was bringing me home pop and comic books and taking me for drives and taking me for like a week. This went on. Like it almost felt like he was so heartbroken that it was the worst thing in the world that his daughter hated him. I felt so morbidly horrible about that. I never did it again. I never said such a thing to my father ever again. It was such a terrible thing, and I remember that feeling, and I never gave it any thought. But when I woke up to some of these ideas, later on in life, right, I recognized the idea of what happened. I was the light, and he was afraid I wasn't going to shine in his life. Maybe he had a worried about the poker game on Friday night. I was his lucky charm at the horse races and in Reno and stuff. Maybe there was that anticipation or fear, that little bit of what do you call that? What do you call that when you believe in things that aren't fables? Like fables? No, that's not the word I'm looking for, but if you guys know what the word I'm talking about. But yeah, my parents knew my light was there. My dad loved being with me. My dad spent lots of time with me, like quality time with me. And I wish I had spent more time in those conversations, but I just loved being in his company, and he loved being in my company. And it was in that exchange of the light. Maybe your dad didn't have light, because you said you had that relationship with your dad like I had with my mother, right? My mother did not like my light. My mother would send me off to my aunt's to spend the summer. My mother, like I said, didn't care if I came home until 1 o'clock in the morning. It was just that sandpaper that I rubbed up against her wrong. And some people, we do that too, right? But yeah, your dad recognized your light. I recognize your light, Andrew. Right? I don't even know what you look like, Andrew. And me and you have been friends for years and years and years, and I know your heart, and I know for sure, right? Your dad would want you close. Your dad loved your light. Okay, the lady who jumped into the water from the Andrea Doria was Lily. Oh, I gotta write that. I gotta write that down too. Otherwise, I might not be able to find it. Um, L. Liliana. Liliana. Okay, I'll be able to find it after the live show. Thank you, Andrew. Um, Not a horror movie, but I love the music from the movie Basic Instinct. Oh, it's been a long time since I saw that movie, Andrew, right? It's been a long, long time since I saw that movie. Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone. They did a few movies together, those two actresses. I saw Sharon Stone. She's a big, big lady. I didn't recognize her at first when I saw her. It was the reason why she didn't get invited to do the remake of Top Gun, is because she had gained all that weight. Remember, she was in that siren role in the first movie, right? Uh, space. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, you're right. Space Invaders. That's a game I liked. It came out the same time as Pac Man. Yeah. Pac Man and Space Invaders. Those were the only two video games I played, but those were not video games we played at home. Those were arcade games, and I love the arcades because I love pinball. I was a pinball girl. Nobody could compete with me. I could have gone into the Olympics for pinball, man, and not just regular pinball. We're talking multi-ball pinball, the Batman, and right? Oh my goodness, the circus where you could have like multi balls going on at the same time. Oh yeah, I was good at. Always got free games. Nobody ever got a chancy when I got on a pinball machine that I liked. I could play all day on a quarter. Well, probably it'd take me about 75 cents to get to the free games, right? Because you take when you first get in to play the pinball games, it takes you a couple of games to warm up. But then as soon as you get your first free game, then you start getting the two free games because you hit the bonuses, and then you hit the high numbers where you get another free game. And then I would just keep those free games just racking. Yeah. Have a good night, William. I'm sure he's left already. Have a good night, everybody. Kathy, thank you for popping in. Owen, William, Andrew, anybody who's in the background. For those of you who pop in later, who may pop in later, take your shoes off and kind of hang out with us. Sorry we missed ya. Pop it into the comments. Just a little hello if Eugene pops in. Eugene, just make sure you say hi. You've been new to the crew. I told you this week on he's a new character, and you guys, he's coming to our live shows a couple of times, and but he comes into my what's my good cheer, oh, almost every day. So I told him to come in on Sunday. So if he didn't make it in during the live, maybe he'll pop in later and hang out in the comments until he gets to this part and say, oh my goodness, and he said hi. Hi guys, and hi to anybody who pops in later. So much appreciate you guys watching. I'll be back next Sunday. In the meantime, I'll be back tomorrow for what's my good cheer. I don't know what. Oh, I do. I'm on the topic right now. Guilt and shame. Oh, it's heavy, and that's why we do these late ones on Sunday. Okay, you guys, it's time for some dinner or something to eat. and to finish my juice and my cold tea and, yeah, get into something enjoyable. This was enjoyable, but something to carry it on so I can say, oh my goodness, what a great day. And it was a great day today. Really was. Okay, you guys, have a great week.